write that down. Okay, now I'm in the mood to do some George. This is where I left off with Robert Dinwiddie. Alexandria, April 5th, 1757. I'll probably include this with the Little Women segment. That's the end of it. Honorable Sir, a letter which I received from Captain Mercer upon my return to Alexandria informs me that 95 Catawbas, besides 25 that are gone to Williamsburg, are now in Winchester, waiting orders how to conduct themselves. That according to custom they are in want of match coats, shirts, leggings, and all other necessaries. I should be glad to receive your Honor's particular directions with respect to providing them with those things, and what manner they are to be employed. As I understand, they intend in company, in a body, any troops of ours that may march toward Duquesne, or if no expedition of that kind is intended, then to go out in small scalping parties against the enemy. As your Honor gave me no particular directions concerning withdrawing the troops from Fort Cumberland or how they are to be employed and posted, when relieved by the Marylanders, I should be glad of orders now also, whether I am to bring off all Virginia stores, at that same time that the Indian goods are removed. If your Honor does not choose to give particular directions concerning the disposition of the troops, but leave it to me, I shall endeavor to post them in the most advantageous manner I can, until I have the pleasure of seeing you, when this and many other affairs may be fully settled, and I hope you will not think it advisable to order any part of our small regiment to march for Carolina, till the assembly meets and come to some determination about raising more, as consequences might be had. Notwithstanding, I know it was determined that only forts should be retained, and that these were fixed on. I shall not evacuate the others without orders, as I know it would be attended with very ill effects, nor do I think it advisable that they should be dismantled just at this time. However, in this as in all other points, I only wait your Honor's determinations to carry them into execution. I set out immediately for Fort Loudon, and from thence to Fort Cumberland, if time will admit it. I have ordered this express to proceed as soon as he receives your Honor's dispatches to the former. Governor Sharp did not incline to give Captain Dagworthy orders to march to Fort Cumberland until you shall have given particular orders about withdrawing our garrison.
That's not even a question.
Therefore, the sooner I receive them, the better. I shall be down by the 28th, if possible, and remain your Honors. I appreciate you. John J. We avenge you. To Richard Washington, Fort Loudon, April 15th, 1757. Dear Sir, after so long silence, it may be expected, I should introduce this letter with an apology for my seeming neglect. It is necessary to urge something in my defense. I own, sir, that I may satisfy you, it proceeds from a very different cause than the one of inclination, and what can be so proper as the truth. I have been posted then for 20 months past upon our cold and barren frontiers, to perform, I think I may say, impossibilities, that is, to protect from the cruel incursions of a crafty savage enemy, a line of inhabitants of more than 350 miles in extent with a force inadequate to the task. By this means I am become in a manner an exile and seldom informed of those opportunities, which I might otherwise embrace of corresponding with my friends. Experience, sir, has convinced every thinking man in this colony that we must bid adieu to peace and safety whilst the French are allowed to possess the Ohio, and practice their hellish arts among the numerous tribes of Indian nations that inhabit those regions. They are also convinced that it must be attended with an expense infinitely greater to defend our possessions, as they ought to be defended, against the skulking enemy than to remove the cause of our groundless fears, in the reduction of the place, Fort Duquesne, I mean. Yet, from the strange causes I know not, no attempts this season will be made, I fear, to destroy his hold of barbarians, for they deserve no better a name who have become a terror to 3 populous colonies. Virginia may justly say that she was always willing to furnish her full proportion of men and money for this desirable end, and I think I can venture to affirm that there never was, and verily I believe never will be, A more favorable time than the present for an enterprise of this kind, while the enemy troops are doubtless drawn up to the northward to defend themselves at home against the more formidable attacks of Lord Loudon. I have now to add that I am so a little acquainted with the business relative to my private affairs that I can scarce give you any information concerning it. I know that I ought to have some tobacco, and that it ought to be shipped, and that I begged the favor of Colonel Carlyle on Potomac and Fielding Lewis Esquire on Rappahannock to do this for me, and I desired them to write you in my behalf and draw for sundry things which I am in want of. But whether any part or all of this is done I know not. I shall therefore desire these two things of you. First, that you make yourself to no real inconvenience in providing goods to greater amount than my remittances will fetch, because I by no means intended to be troublesome when I solicited your correspondence. And secondly, that whatever goods you may send me, where the prices are not absolutely limited, you will let them in fashionably, neat, and good in their several kinds. Enclosed is a list of sundries which I should be glad to receive agreeable to those directions. I am, and C. Invoice of sundry goods to be shipped by Mr. Washington of London for the use of G. Washington, viz. Okay, this is where I left off. Fort Loudon, April 15th, 1757. A marble chimney piece of the dimensions enclosed, given by the workmen, the cost not to exceed 15 guineas. N.B. Let it be carefully packed. A neat landscape, 3 feet by 21½ inches, 1 inch margin for a chimney, 250 panes, window glass 11 by 9. Paper for 5 rooms of the following dimensions: 18 by 12, 16 by 12, 16 by 14, 18 by 15, and 15 by 16, all 8 feet pitch. The paper differing in their colors, also paper of a very good kind and color for a dining room, 18 by 16 above chair boards. The pitch of the room is 11 feet. Papier-mâché for the ceiling of 2 rooms, one of them 18 feet square, the other 18 by 16 with their CR chimneys. 2 neat mahogany tables, 4½ feet square when spread and to join occasionally. 1 dozen neat and strong mahogany chairs at 21. Dozen fashionable locks for partition doors and appurtenances. 1 dozen fashion hinges for the said doors, and 2 pure larger. To Robert Dinwiddie, Fort Cumberland, April 16th, 1757. Honorable Sir, your letter by express of the 5th instant I fear has fallen to the hands of the common enemy, for I never had seen it. The other of the 7th I this day received, and being exceedingly embarrassed to come to your honest intentions, and really at a loss to know what manners to act in such perplexed and difficult circumstances, I call the council of officers to my aid. The result of their advice you will find in the enclosed. It will not be my power to be in Williamsburg by the 22nd, as your honor desires, but as soon as after as I can, I certainly will. I shall leave orders with Colonel Stephen to march this garrison to Fort Loudon as soon as it is relieved, which cannot be before this express may return, and then your honor's further orders may be received. We had no advice of Dagworthy's marching. The orders were sent to him. I shall order all the country store to be carried to Fort Loudon, and the 2 companies on Patterson Creek to be posted on the branch, to complete the number that was designed for that place. I have ordered particular return provisions to be made out, and Colonel Stevens to take Captain Dagworthy's receipt for the quantity left. We have been at a good deal of unavoidable expense and trouble to furnish the Indians with such things as they wanted. Some enemy Indians killed 2 Catawbas on Thursday last, at about 150 yards from the fort and 70 from a sentry, and made their escape, though pursued by other Catawbas and near 200 men. And the day before yesterday 2 soldiers were killed and a 3rd taken prisoner, as they were coming to this place from the fort below. The rest of the party, being 10 in number, with Captain Wagner among them, made their escape. The enclosed remonstrance I received just now, and I think it expedient to send it to your honor, that you may know the temper and disposition of the troops. As I expect to be with your honor in 2 or 3 days after the express, I think it needless to add anything but an apology for the incoherence of this. The Indians are all around teasing and perplexing me for one thing or another, so that I scarce know what I write. I have the honor in C. That's suspicious, I'll be honest. Remonstrance of officers of the Virginia Regiment to Governor Dinwiddie, April 16th, 1757. Dude, I'm like I'm gonna skip way ahead. To Alexander White. Mount Vernon, July 14th, 1785. Dear Sir, Mr. Francis' letters to you and to me, the last of which I also enclose for your perusal, are so expressive of his one as to render it unnecessary for me to add aught on the occasion of them. He has been considered, though confined with British lines, as a friend to our cause. It is said he was remarkably attentive to our prisoners in the city of New York, supporting them as far as his means would allow, in the hour of the greatest distress. This it is which led both Governor Clayton and myself to countenance and support him, and is the cause, I presume, of his applying me to you, and must be my apology for giving you the trouble of this letter. With respect to his demand against the estate of General Lee, I know nothing. His letter, to the best of my recollection, is the first intimation I ever had of his being a creditor. The propriety and justice, therefore, of the claim must speak for themselves, and will no doubt have their due weight. The time of payment seems interesting to me. To him. The subject of this letter reminds me of an account of my own against General Lee's estate, which I put into your hands at the spring last year, with great esteem. I am and see. To William Fitzhugh, Mount Vernon, July 14th, 1785. Dear Sir, your favor of the 4th came to me on the 12th. At the time of writing it, you could not have received my letter dated in the latter part of June, covering one for Richard Belton. Not knowing how otherwise to get one to him, I took the liberty of addressing it to your care. In that letter I informed him that if he did not immediately enter upon the execution of his contract, I would put the penalty thereof in force. But from the abandoned course in which he seems to have engaged, from your last letter, and his unwillingness to forsake his associates in drunkenness, I do not choose, although the disappointment occasions me the loss of a summer, to be concerned with him, lest his bad example should have an unfavorable influence upon my workmen, of which I have several. I beg, therefore, if my letter to him has not been forwarded, that you would be so obliging as to destroy it. As I am not in immediate want of the articles which you were so good as to offer me, I had rather take the chance of a water conveyance round than to send my wagon to Colonel Platter's. But as this may not happen soon, and it is unreasonable to keep you out of the cost of them, if you will ascertain the quantity and price of such as you can best spare, I will pay them out to your order at any time. The brass spring locks and hinges, and any other hinges, the mortise locks and furnace, the glue and painter's brushes, or such part of each as you can most conveniently dispense with, may be added to my former list. All the loans. The guinea grass seeds which I sowed proved as defective as yours, but my nephew, who arrived after I had the pleasure of your company at this place, brought me a small quantity from Bermuda, some of which I sowed in part has vegetated. If it prospers and is worth cultivating, I will supply you with a little of it to put you in stock. He speaks of it in very favorable terms, but is doubtful of the climate. Mrs. Washington joins in compliments and best wishes for Mrs. Fitzhugh and yourself, with dear Sir, and C. P.S. I address this letter to you at Annapolis in consequence of the information of your intention to be there about the middle of this month. To Israel Shreve, Mount Vernon, July 15, 1785. Sir, your letter of the 22nd of June came safely to hand. I had no lands in the west country which I incline at this time to make actual sale of. Between the two Kanawhas on the banks of the Iowa, I hold, bounded by the river and rich bottom which good mill seeds, about 10,000 acres of as valuable land as any in that region, and on the excuse me for a second, what was that? What is GT? And on the Girt Ganhawa, from near its mouth upwards, I have about 30,000 acres more of equal quality, with the first mentioned, all of which I have offered on leases for $21,999 for 10 years, renewable forever and increasing rents, on certain conditions which were published in Claypool's paper in March or April or last year and may easily be resorted. mean, you can't get any louder than that, boys. As I have not disposed of these lands yet, I presume the terms are thought too high. But as I know the situation convenes of them, and the quality of the soil is inferior to none in all the Western Territory, I do not incline to make any change in my terms, unless I am in a manner compelled to it by taxation, which, however inconvenient it may be to myself, I wish to see heavily laid on, that the officers and soldiers and other public creditors may receive their just dues. I am, etc. To Tinch Tilghman, Mount Vernon, July 17, 1785. Dear Sir, by Mr. Governor Morris, I sent you the amount of the cost of plank, which you were so obliging as to send me for Baltimore. The packet enclosed with this for Mr. Hilliges contains necessary and valuable papers for Mr. Thomas Smith, in a suit I have been obliged to commence in Washington County, State of Pennsylvania, against sundry persons who, taking advantage of my absence and peculiar situation during the war, possess themselves of a tract of land, I told, in the vicinity of Fort Pitt, for which I have in patent obtained in legal form ever since the year 1774, and for which I am now compelled to bring ejectments. Mr. Smith requested these papers to be sent to him under cover to Mr. Hilliges as a certain mode of conveyance, but as much time has elapsed in obtaining them, as some of the papers point to evidence which may not readily become at the suit may come forward at the September term, and as the channel of conveyance pointed out by him is very circuitous, I should be most obliged, if good opportunities frequently offer from Baltimore or Carlisle, by your stripping off the address to Mr. Hilliges, and forwarding the enclosure as directed to Mr. Smith, with much truth and sincerity. I am, etc. No, no. 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 Hey, we're trying, aren't we? I mean, I'm gonna listen to you before I listen to them. Be honest. To Samuel Powell. Hold on, before I do this. Do some brown nosing. Sir, the honor which the Society for Promoting Agriculture, lately established in the city of Philadelphia, has done me by electing me an honorary member, is highly pleasing and flattering to me. The strongest assurances of which I pray you, at the next meeting, to communicate with my respectful compliments to the Society. Accept at the same time, sir, my acknowledgment of the flattering expression with which you have accompanied the certificate of my election. No measure, in my opinion, will be more conducive to the public weal than the establishment of this society, if the purposes of it are prosecuted with spirit. Much is it to be wished that each state would institute similar ones, and that these societies, when formed, would correspond regularly and freely with each other. We are not only in our infancy of agriculture improvement, but in the states the farmers are pursuing an unprofitable course of crops to their utter destruction of the lands. I am obliged to the Society for its address to the public and for the summary of a course of crops by Mr. Borderly. The latter I had before received from the author, who was so obliging as to send me several copies immediately after publication thereof. I had the honor, etc. To George Whedon, Mount Vernon, July 23, 1785. Dear Sir, it is some time since I received the enclosed bill under cover from the drawer among a multiplicity of other letters. It got buried and forgot. until a line from Mr. D. Marboy the other day, forwarding a third bill of the same tenor date, reminded me of it. As I do know who the treasurer of the Society of the Cincinnati of the State is, I take the liberty of committing the bill to your care, with a request that you would be so obliging as to ask him personally if he is near you, or by letter if he is at a distance, for a receipt for it, that I may transmit the same to Colonel de Corning, with an apology for my long silence. If I knew who the state treasurer is, I would not give you any trouble in this business, but as I really do not, I hope it will be received as an excuse for having done it, I am, etc. Say 17 seconds. Excuse me? Richard Cox. As a Coxman. That's my grandmother's maiden name, Cox. Flora Cox. To David Humphreys. Mount Vernon, July 25th, 1785. My dear Humphreys, since my last due I have received your letter of the 15th of January, and I believe the 11th of November, and thank you for them. It always gives me pleasure to hear from you, and I should think it amused me. It would spare you. Business could not so much absorb your time as to prevent your writing more frequently, especially as there is a regular conveyance once a month by the packet. As the complexion of European politics seems now, from letters I have received from Marquis de Lafayette, Cavalier Chartelot de la Luzerne, and C, to have a tendency to peace, I will say nothing of war, nor make any animadversions upon the contending powers. Otherwise, I might possibly have said that the retreat from it seemed impossible after explicit declaration of the parties. My first wish is to see this plague to mankind banished from off the earth, and the sons of daughters of this world employed in more pleasing and innocent amusements, than in preparing implements and exercising them for the destruction of mankind. Rather than quarrel about territory, let the poor, the needy and oppressed of the earth, and those who want land resort to the fertile plains of our western country. The second promise, and there dwell in peace, fulfilling the first and great commandment. In a former letter, I informed you, my dear Humphreys, that if I had talents for it, I had not leisure to turn my thoughts to commentaries. A consciousness of a defective education, and certainly of the want of time, unfit me for such an undertaking. What with company, letters, and other matters, many of them quite extraneous, I have not been able to arrange my own private concerns so as to rescue them from the disordered state into which they have been thrown by the war, and to do which is become absolutely necessary for my support, whilst I remain on this stage of human action. The sentiments of your last letter on this subject gave me great pleasure. I should be pleased indeed to see you undertake the business. Your abilities as a writer, your discernment respecting the principles which lead to the decision by arms, your personal knowledge of many facts as they occurred in progress of the war, your disposition to justice, candor, and impartiality, and your diligence in investigating truth, combining to fit you when you join with the vigor of life for this task. And I should with great pleasure not only give you the perusal of all my papers, but an oral information of circumstances, which cannot be obtained from the former, that my memory will furnish. And I can with great truth add that my house will not only be at your service during the period of your preparing this work, but, and without any meaning compliment I say it, I should be exceedingly happy if you would make it your home. You might have an apartment to yourself in which you could command your own time. You would be considered and treated as one of the family, and meet with the cordial reception and entertainment which are characteristic of the sincerest friendship. To reverberate European news would be idle, and we have little domestic time worthy of attention. We have held treaties indeed with the Indians, but they were so unreasonably delayed that these people, by our last accounts from the westward, are in discontented mood, supposed by many to be instigated thereto by our late enemies, now, to be sure, fast friends, who, from anything I can learn, under the indefinite expression of the treaty hold, and seem resolved to retain possession of our western post. Congress have also, after long and tedious deliberation, passed an ordinance for laying off the Western Territory into states, and for disposing of the land, but in a manner and on terms which few people in the southern states conceive can be accomplished. Both sides are sure, and the event is appealed to. Let time decide it. It is, however, to be regretted that local politics and self-interested views obtrude themselves into every measure of public utility, but to such characters be the consequences. My attention is more immediately engaged in a project which I think big with great political, as well as commercial consequences to these states, especially the middle ones. It is by removing the obstructions and extending the inland navigation of our rivers to bring the states on the Atlantic in close connection with those forming to the westward by short and easy transportation. Without this, I can easily conceive they will have different views, separate interests, and other connections. I may be singular in my ideas, but they are these that to open a door to and make easy the way for these settlers to the westward, which ought to progress regularly and compactly, before we make any stir about the navigation of the Mississippi, and before our settlements are far advanced towards that river, would be our true line of policy. It can, I think, be demonstrated that the produce of the Western Territory, if the navigations which are now in hand succeed, in which I have no doubt, as low down the Ohio as the great Kanawha, I believe in the falls, and between the parts above and the lakes may be brought either to the highest shipping port on this or James River, and at last expense with more ease, including the return, and in a much shorter time than it can be carried to New Orleans, if the Spaniards, instead of restricting, were to throw open their ports and divide our trade. But if the commerce of that country should embrace this channel, and connections be formed, experience has taught us, and there is a very recent proof with Britain, how next to impracticable it is to divert it. And if that should be the case, the Atlantic states, especially those to be westward in a great degree filled with foreigners, will be no more to the present Union, except to excite, perhaps very justly, our fears, than the country of California, which is still more to the westward and belonging to another power. Mrs. Washington presents her compliments to you, and with every wish for your happiness, I am, and C. To Marquis de Lafayette, Mount Vernon, July 25th, 1785. My dear Marquis, I have to acknowledge and thank you for your several favors of the night, February 19th of March, and 16th of April, with their enclosures, all of which, the last only yesterday, have been received since I had the honor to address you in February. I stand before you as a culprit, but to repent and be forgiven are the precepts of heaven. I do the former, do you practice the latter, and will be participation of a divine attribute. Yet I am not barren of excuses for this scene inattention, frequent absences from home, around a company when at it, and the pressure of many matters might be urged as apologies for my long silence. But I disclaim all of them, and trust to the forbearance of friendship and your wonted indulgence. Indeed, so few things occur in the line on which I now move, worthy of attention, that this also might be added to the catalogue of my excuses, especially when I further add that one of my letters, if it is to be estimated according to its length, would make 3 of yours. I now congratulate you, and my heart does it more affectionately than my pen, on your safe arrival at Paris, from your voyage to this country, and on the happy meeting with Madame Lafayette and your family in good health. May the blessing of the long continue to them, and may every day add an increase of happiness to yourself. As the clouds which overspread your hemisphere are dispersing into peace with all concomitants is dawning upon your land, I will banish the sound of war from my lecture. I wish to see the sons and daughters of the world of peace, and busily employed in the more agreeable amusement of fulfilling the first and great commandment, increase and multiply, as an encouragement to which we have opened the fertile plains of the Ohio to the poor, the needy, the oppressed of the earth. Any one, therefore, who is heavy laden, or who wants land to cultivate, may repair thither and abound, as in the land of promise, with milk and honey. The ways are preparing, and the roads will be made easy, through the channels of Potomac and James River. Speaking of these navigations, I had the pleasure to inform you that the subscriptions, especially for the first, at the surrender of the books agree with the fact which I enclose you in my last, exceed my most sanguine expectation. For the latter, that of the James River, no comparison of them has yet been made. I appreciate you. Rochambeau. That's bro from Dodgeball. From school. Of the 50,000 sterling required on the Potomac navigation, upwards of 40,000 was subscribed before the middle of May, and increasing fast. A president and 4 directors, consisting of her humble servant, Governors Johnson and Lee of Maryland, and Colonel Fitzgerald and Gilpin of the state, were chosen to conduct the undertaking. It's funny his throw is even like a paper cut. It's funny. I thought about that. That was not what I was thinking of. The first dividend of the money was paid on the 15th of this month, and the work is to be begun on the 1st of the next. In those parts which require least skill, even more difficult till an engineer of abilities and practical knowledge can be obtained. Which reminds me of the question which I propound to you in my last on this subject, and on which I should be glad to learn your sentiments. This prospect, if it succeeds, and of which I had no doubt, will bring the Atlantic States and the Western Territory into close connection, and be productive of very extensive commercial and political consequences, the last of which gave the spur in my exertions, as I could foresee many and great mischiefs which could naturally result from a separation, and that a separation would inevitably take place if the obstruction between the two countries remained, and the navigation of the Mississippi should be made free. Great Britain in her commercial policy is acting the same unwise part with respect to herself, which seems to have influenced all her councils, and thereby is defeating her own ends. The restriction of our trade and her heavy imposts on the staple commodities of this country will, I conceive, immediately produce powers in Congress to regulate the trade of the Union, which more than probably would not have been obtained within half a century. The mercantile interests of the whole Union are endeavoring to effect this, and will no doubt succeed. They see the necessity of controlling power and the futility, indeed the absurdity of each state enacting laws for this purpose independent of one another. This will be the case also after a while in all matters of common concern. It is to be regretted. I confess the democratical states must also feel before they concede. It is this that makes their government slow, but the people will be right at last. Congress, after long deliberation, have at length agreed upon a mode for disposing of the lands of the United States and the Western Territory. It may be a good one, but it does not comfort with my ideas. The ordinance is long, and I have none of them by me, or I would send one for your perusal. They seem in this instance, as in almost every other, to be surrendering the little power they have to the states individually which gave it to them. Many think the price which they have fixed upon the lands too high, and all to the southward I believe that disposing of them in townships and by square miles alternately, they will be a great let to the sale, but experience, to which there is an appeal, must decide. Soon after I had written to you in February, Mr. Jefferson, and after him Mr. Carmichael, informed me that in consequence of any application from Mr. Harrison for permission to export a jack for me from Spain, His Catholic Majesty had ordered 2 of the first race in his kingdom. Let an accident might happen to one, to be purchased and presented to me as a mark of his esteem. Such an instance of condescension and attention from a crowned head is very flattering, and lays me under great obligation to the king. But neither of them has yet arrived. These, I presume, are the 2 mentioned in your favor the 16th of April. One is having been shipped from Cadiz, the other is expected from the Isle of Malta, which you would forward. As they have been purchased since December last, I began to be apprehensive of accidents, which I wish may not be the case with respect to the one from Cadiz, if he was actually shipped at the time of your account. Should the others pass through your hands, you cannot oblige me more than by requiring the greatest care and most particular attention to be paid to him. I have long endeavored to procure one of a good size and breed, but had little expectation of receiving 2 as a royal gift. I am much obliged to you, my dear Marquis, for your attention to the hounds, and not less sorry that you should have met the smallest difficulty, or experienced the least trouble in obtaining them. I was no way anxious about these, consequently should I have felt no regret, or sustained no loss if you had not succeeded in your application. I have commissioned 3 or 4 persons, among whom Colonel Marshall is one, to procure for me in Kentucky for the use of the King's Gardens at Versailles or elsewhere the seeds mentioned in the list you sent me from New York, and such others are as curious, and will forward them as soon as they come to my hands, which cannot be till after the growing crop has given its seeds. My best wishes will accompany you to Potsdam and to the Austrian dominions whenever you set out upon the tour. As an unobserved spectator, I should like to take a peep at the troops of those monarchs at their maneuverings upon a grand field day. But as it is among the unattainable things, my philosophy shall supply the place of curiosity and set my mind at ease. In your favor of the 19th of March, you speak of letters which were sent by Mr. Williams, but none such have come to hand. The present for the little folks did not arrive by Mr. Redoubt's ship as you expected. To what cause owing, I know not. Mrs. Washington has but indifferent health, and the late loss of her mother and only brother, Mr. Bethal Dandridge, one of the judges of our Supreme Court, has rather added to her indisposition. My mother and friends enjoy good health. George has returned after his peregrination through the West Indies to Bermuda, the Bahama Islands, and Charlestown, at the last place he's spent the winter. He is in better health than when he set out, but not quite recovered. He is now on a journey to the Sweet Springs to procure a stock sufficient to fit him for a matrimonial voyage in the frigate F. Bassett, on board which he means to embark at his return in October. How far his case is desperate, I leave you to judge. If it is so, the remedy, however pleasing at first, will certainly be violent. The latter end of April, I had the pleasure to receive in good order, by a ship from London, the picture of yourself, Madame Lafayette, and the children, which I consider as an invaluable present, and shall give at the best place in my house. Mrs. Washington joins me in respectful confidence, and in every good wish for Madame de Lafayette, yourself and family. All the others who have come under your kind notice present their compliments to you. For myself, I can only repeat the sincere attachment and unbounded affection of my dear Marquis. How now, girls? Alright. Chapter 12, Little Women. Camp Lawrence. I had to get Shakespeare out earlier. So it has to do with this pole over here. What? I don't know, but it has to do with this pole. Camp Lawrence. Beth was postmistress. For being most at home, she could attend to it regularly, and dearly liked the daily task of unlocking the little door and disturbing the mail. One July day, she came in with her hands full and went about the house leaving letters and parcels like the penny post. "Here's your posy, Mother. Laurie never forgets that," she said, putting the fresh nosegay in the vase that stood in Marmie's corner and was kept supplied by the affectionate boy. "Miss Meg March, one letter in a glove," continued Beth, to deliver the articles of her sister, who sat near her mother, stitching wristbands. "Why, I left a pair over there, and here is only one," said Meg, looking at the gray cotton glove. "Didn't you drop the other in the garden?" "No, I'm sure I didn't, for there was only one in the office." "I hate to have odd gloves." "Never mind, the other may be found. My letter is only a translation of the German song I wanted. I think Mr. Brooke did it, for this isn't Laurie's writing." Mrs. March glanced at Meg, who was looking very pretty in her gingham morning gown, with the little curls blowing about her forehead, very womanly as she sat sewing at her little work table, full of tidy white rolls, so unconscious of the thought in her mother's mind as she sewed and sang, while her fingers flew and her thoughts were busied with girlish fancies as innocent and fresh as the pansies in her belt, that Mrs. March smiled and was satisfied. 2 letters for Dr. Joe, a book, and a funny old hat, which covered the old post office and stuck outside, said Beth, laughing as she went into the study where Joe sat writing. "What a sly fellow Laurie is," I said. "I wished that bigger hats were the fashion, because I burn my face every hot day." He said, "Why mind the fashion? Wear a big hat and be comfortable." I said I would if I had one, and he has sent me this try to me. I'll wear it for fun and show him I don't care for the fashion, and hanging the antique broad brim on a bust of Plato, Joe read her letters. One from her mother made her cheeks glow and her eyes fill, for it said to her, "My dear, I write a little word to tell you with how much satisfaction I watch your efforts to control your temper. You say nothing about your trials, failures, or successes, and think perhaps that no one sees them but the friend whose help you daily ask. if I may trust the well-worn cover of your guidebook. I, too, have seen them all and heartily believe in the sincerity of your resolution, since it begins to bear fruit. Go on, dear, patiently and bravely, and always believe that no one sympathizes more tenderly with you than your loving mother. That does me good. That's worth millions of money and pecks of praise. Oh, Marmee, I do try. I will keep on trying and not get tired since I have you to help me. Laying her head on her arms, Jo wet her little romance with a few happy tears, for she had thought that no one saw and appreciated her efforts to be good, and the assurance was doubly precious, doubly encouraging, because unexpected and from the person whose commendation she most valued. Feeling stronger than ever to meet and to subdue her Apollyon, she pinned the note inside her frock as a shield and a reminder, lest she be taken unaware, and proceeded to open her other letter, quite ready for either good or bad news. In a big, dashing hand, Laurie wrote, Dear Jo, what ho! Some English girls and boys are coming to see me tomorrow, and I want to have a jolly time. If it's fine, I'm going to pitch my tent in Long Meadow and roll up the whole crew to lunch and croquet, have a fire, make messes, gypsy fashion, and all sorts of larks. They are nice people and like such things. Brooke will go to keep us boys steady, and Kate Vaughn will play propriety for the girls. I want you all to come. Can't let Beth off at any price, and nobody shall worry her. Don't bother about rations. I'll see to that everything else. Only do come, there's a good fellow. And it's here in hurry, your ever, Laurie. Here's riches, cried Jo, flying in to tell the news to Meg. Of course we can go, Mother. It will be such a help to Laurie, for I can row and Meg see to lunch, and the children will be useful in some way. I hope the Vaughns are not fine grown-up people. Do you know anything about them, Jo? Asked Meg. Only that there are 4 of them. Kate is older than you, Fred and Frank, twins about my age, and a little girl, Grace, who is 9 or 10. Laurie knew them abroad and liked the boys. I fancied from the way he primmed up his mouth in speaking of her that he didn't admire Kate much. I'm so glad my French prince clean. It's just a thing and so becoming, observed Meg complacently. Have you anything decent, Jo? Scarlet and gray boating suit. Good enough for me. I shall row and tramp about, so I don't want any starch to think of. You'll come, Betty. If you won't let any boys talk to me. Not a boy. I like to please Laurie, and I'm not afraid of Mr. Brooke. He is so kind, but I don't want to play, or sing, or say anything. I'll work hard and not trouble anyone, and you'll take care of me, Jo, as I'll go. That's my good girl. You do try to fight off your shyness, and I love you for it. Fighting faults isn't easy, I know, and a cheery word kind of gives a lift. Thank you, Mother. And Jo gave the chin a grateful kiss, more precious Miss March than if it had given back the rosy roundness of her youth. I had a box of chocolate drops and the picture I wanted a copy, said Amy, showing her mail. And I got a note from Mr. Lawrence asking me to come over and play to him tonight, before the lamps are lighted, and I shall go, added Beth, whose friendship with the old gentleman prospered finally. Now let's fly around and do double duty today, so that we can play tomorrow in free minds, said Jo, preparing to place her pen with the broom. When the sun peeped into the girls' room early next morning and promised them a fine day, he saw a comical sight. Each had made such preparations for the fete as seemed necessary and proper. Meg had an extra roll of little curl papers across her forehead. Jo had copiously anointed her afflicted face with cold cream. Beth had taken Joanna to bed with her to atone for their approaching separation, and Amy had capped the climax by putting a clothespin on her nose to uplift the offending feature. It was one of the kind of artists used to hold the paper on their drawing boards, therefore quite appropriate and effective for the purpose for which it was now put. This funny spectacle appeared to amuse the son, for he burst out with such radiance that Jo woke up and aroused her sisters by a hearty laugh at Amy's ornament. Sunshine and laughter were good omens for a pleasure party, and soon a lively bustle began in both houses. Beth, who was ready first, kept reporting what went on next door, and unlivened her sisters' toilets by frequent telegrams from the window. There goes the man with the tent. I see Mrs. Barker doing up the lunch in a ramper in a great basket. Now Mr. Lawrence is looking up at the sky and the weathercock. I wish he would go too. There's Laurie looking like a sailor. Nice boy. Oh, mercy me, here's a carriage full of people. A tall lady and a little girl and 2 dreadful boys. One is lame, poor thing. He's got a crutch. Laurie didn't tell us that. Be quick, girls, it's getting late. Why, there's Ned Moffat, I do declare. Meg isn't that man who bowed to you one day when we were shopping. So it is. How queer that he should come. I thought he was at the mountains. There's Sally. I'm glad she got back in time. Am I all right, Joe? Cried Meg in a flutter. A regular daisy. Hold up your dress and put your hat on straight. It looks sentimental tipped that way and will fly off at the first puff. Now then, come on. Oh, Joe, you are not going to wear that awful hat. It's too absurd. You shall not make a guy of yourself, remonstrated Meg, as Joe tied down with a red ribbon the broad-brimmed, old-fashioned leghorn Laurie had sent for a joke. I just will, though, for it's capital. So shady light and big, it'll make fun, and I don't mind being a guy if I'm comfortable. With that, Joe marched straight away, and the rest followed. A bright little band of sisters, all looking their best in summer suits with happy faces under the jaunty hat brims. Laurie ran to meet and present them to his friends in the most cordial manner. The lawn was the reception room, and for several minutes a lively scene was enacted there. Meg was grateful to see that Miss Kate, though 20, was dressed with a simplicity which American girls would do well to imitate, and she was much flattered by Mr. Ned's assurances that he came especially to see her. Joe understood why Laurie primmed up his mouth when speaking of Kate, for that young lady had a standoff. Don't touch me air, which contrasted strongly with the free and easy demeanor of the other girls. Beth took an observation of the new boys and decided that the lame one was not dreadful, but gentle and feeble, and she would be kind to him on that account. Amy found Grace a well-mannered, merry little person, and after staring dumbly at one another for a few minutes, they suddenly became very good friends. Tents, lunch, and croquet utensils having been sent on beforehand, the party was soon embarked, and the two boats pushed off together, leaving Mr. Lawrence waving his hat on the shore. Laurie and Joe rowed one boat, Mr. Brooke and Ned the other, while Fred Vaughn, the riotous twin, did his best to upset both by paddling about in a wherry, like a disturbed water bug. Joe's funny hat deserved a vote of thanks for its general utility. It broke the ice in the beginning by producing a laugh. It created quite a refreshing breeze, flapping to and fro as she rowed, and would make an excellent umbrella for the whole party. If a shower came up, she said. Kate looked rather amazed at Joe's proceedings, especially as she exclaimed, "Christopher Columbus," when she lost her oar, and Laurie said, "My dear fellow, did I hurt you?" when he tripped over her feet and taken his place. But after putting up her glass to examine the queer girl several times, Miss Kate decided that she was odd but rather clever, and smiled upon her from afar. Meg in the other boat was delightfully situated, face to face with the rowers, who both admired the prospect and feathered their oars with uncommon skill and dexterity. Mr. Brooke was a grave, silent young man with handsome brown eyes and a pleasant voice. Meg liked his quiet manners and considered him a walking encyclopedia of useful knowledge. All of a sudden she has superpowers, huh? Can she fly around the block? Breathe fire? He never talked to her much, but he looked at her a good deal, and she never felt sure that he did not regard her with aversion. Ned, being in college, of course, put on all airs which freshmen think is their bounden duty to assume. He was not very wise, but very good-natured, and altogether an excellent person to carry on a picnic. Sally Gardner was absorbed on keeping her white pick dressed clean and chattering with a ubiquitous Fred who kept Beth in constant terror by his pranks. It was not far to Longmeadow, but the tent was pitched and the wickets down by the time they arrived. A pleasant green field with the 3 wide-spreading oaks in the middle and a smooth strip of turf for croquet. "Welcome to Camp Lawrence," said the young host as they landed with exclamations of delight. "Brooke is commander-in-chief. I'm commissary general. The other fellows are staff officers, and you ladies are company. The tent is for your special benefit, and that oak is your drawing room. This is the mess room, and the third is the camp kitchen. Now, let's have a game before it gets hot, and then we'll see about dinner." Frank, Beth, and Amy and Grace sat down to watch the game played by the other 8. Mr. Brooke chose Meg, Kate, and Fred. Laurie took Sally, Joe, and Ned. The English played well, but the Americans played better, and tested every inch of the ground as strong as if the spirit of 76 inspired them. Joe and Fred had several skirmishes and once narrowly escaped high words. Joe threw the last wicket and had missed the stroke, which fairly ruffled her a good deal. Fred was close behind her, and his turn came before her. He gave a stroke. His ball hit the wicket and stopped an inch on the wrong side. No one was very near, and running up to examine, he gave it a sly nudge with his toe, which put it just an inch on the right side. "I'm through! Now, Miss Joe, I'll settle you and get it first," cried the young gentleman, swinging his mallet for another blow. "You pushed it. I saw you. It's my turn now," said Joe sharply. "Upon my word, I didn't move it. It rolled a bit, perhaps, but that is allowed. So stand off, please, and let me have a go at stake." "We don't cheat in America, but you can if you choose," said Joe angrily. "The Yankees are a deal the most tricky. Everybody knows. There you go," returned Fred, croqueting her ball far away. Joe opened her lips to say something rude, but checked herself in time, colored up to her forehead, and stood a minute, hammering down a wicket with all her might, while Fred hit the stake and declared himself out with much exultation. She went off to get the ball and was a long time finding it among the bushes, but she came back, looking cool and quiet, and waited her turn patiently. It took several strokes to regain the place she had lost, and when she got there, the other side had nearly won, for Kate's ball was the last but one had lain near the stake. "By George, it's all up with us." "Goodbye, Kate," Miss Joe owes me one, as you are finished," cried Fred excitedly, as they all drew near to see the finish. "Yankees have a trick of being generous to their enemies," said Joe with a look that made the lad redden. "Especially when they beat them," she added, as leaving Kate's ball untouched, she won the game by a clever stroke. Laurie threw up his hat, then remembered that it wouldn't do to exult over the defeat of his guest, and stopped in the middle of the cheer to whisper to his friend, "Good for you, Joe. He did cheat. I saw him. We can't tell him so, but he won't do it again. Take my word for it." Meg drew her side, under pretense of pinning up a loose braid, and said approvingly, "It was dreadfully provoking, but you kept your temper, and I'm so glad, Joe." "Don't praise me, Meg, for I could box his ears a minute. I should certainly have boiled over if I hadn't stayed among the nettles till I got my rage under control enough to hold my tongue. It's simmering now, so I hope we'll keep out my way," returned Joe, biting her lips as she glowered at Fred from under her big hat. "Time for lunch," said Mr. Brooks, looking at his watch. "Commissary General will make you the fire and get water, while Miss March, Miss Sally, and I spread the table. Who can make good coffee?" "Joe can," said Meg, glad to recommend her sister. So Joe, feeling that her late lessons in cookery were to do her honor, went to preside over the coffee pot, while the children collected dry sticks and the boys made a fire and got water from a spring nearby. Miss Kate sketched, and Frank talked to Beth, who was making little maps of ready rushes to serve his plates. The commander-in-chief and his aides soon spread the tablecloth for an invited array of eat tables and drinkables, prettily decorated. Joe announced that the coffee was ready, and everyone settled themselves to a hearty meal, for youth is seldom dyspeptic, and exercise develops wholesome appetites. A very merry lunch it was, for everything seemed fresh and funny, and frequent peals of laughter startled a venerable horse who fed nearby. There was a pleasing inequality in the table, which produced many mishaps to cups and plates. Acorns dropped in the mill. Little black ants partook of the refreshment without being invited, and fuzzy caterpillars swung down from the tree to see what was going on. 3 white-headed children peeped over the fence, and an objectionable dog barked at them from the other side of the river with all his might and main. "There's salt here," said Laurie as he handed Joe a saucer of berry. "Thank you, I prefer spiders," she replied, fishing up 2 unweary little ones who had gone to a creamy death. "How dare you remind me of that horrid dinner party when you were so nice in every way," added Joe as they both laughed and ate out one of the plates, and China hadn't run short. "I had an uncommonly good time that day, and haven't got over it yet. This is no credit to me. You know, I don't do anything. It's you and Meg and Brooke who make it all go, and I'm no end obliged to you. What shall we do when we can't eat some more?" asked Laurie, feeling that his trump card had been played when lunch was over. "Have games till it's cooler. I brought Arthur's, and I dare say Miss Kate knows something new nice." Go and ask her. She's company, and you ought to stay with her more. Aren't you company too? I thought she'd suit Brooke, but he keeps talking to Meg, and Kate just stares at them through the ridiculous glass of hers. I'm going, so you needn't try to preach propriety, for you can't do it, Joe. Miss Kate did know several new games, and as the girls would not, and the boys could not eat any more, they all adjourned to the drawing room to play Rigmarole. One person begins his story, any nonsense you like, and tells as long as he pleases, only taking care to stop short at some excitement point, when the next takes it up and does the same. It's very funny when well done. It makes a perfect jumble of tragical comic stuff to laugh over. Please start it, Mr. Brooke, said Kate with a commanding air, which surprised Meg, who treated the tutor with as much respect as any other gentleman. Lying on the grass at the feet of the two young ladies, Mr. Brooke obediently began the story, with the handsome brown eyes steadily fixed upon the sunshiny river. Once on a time, a knight went out into the world to seek his fortune, for he had nothing but a sword and a shield. He traveled a long while, nearly 28 years, and had a hard time of it, till he came to the palace of a good old king, who had offered a reward to anyone who could tame and train a fine but unbroken colt, of which he was very fond. The knight agreed to try, and got on slowly but surely, for the colt was a gallant fellow, and soon learned to love his new master, though he was freakish and wild. Every day when he gave his lessons to his pet off of the king's, the knight rode him through the city, and as he rode he looked everywhere for a certain beautiful face, which he had seen many times in his dreams, but never found. One day, as he went prancing down a quiet street, he saw at the window of a ruinous castle the lovely face. He was delighted, inquired who lived in this old castle, and was told that several captive princes were kept there by a spell, and spun all day to lay up money to buy their liberty. The knight wished intensely that he could free them, but he was poor and could only go by each day, watching for the sweet face and longing to see it out in the sunshine. At last he resolved to get into the castle and ask how he could help them. He went and knocked. The great door flew open, and he beheld a ravishing lovely lady, who exclaimed with a cry of rapture, At last, continued Kate, who had read French novels and admired the style. "'Tis she," cried Count Gustave, and fell at her feet in an ecstasy of joy. "Oh, rise," she said, extending a hand of marble fairness. "Never, till you tell me how I may rescue," swore the knight, still kneeling. "Alas, my cruel fate condemns me to remain here till my tyrant is destroyed. Where is the villain?" "In the Mauve Salon. Go, brave heart, and save me from despair." "I obey, and return victorious or dead." With these thrilling words he rushed away, and flinging open the door of the Mauve Salon was about to enter, when he received a stunning blow from the big Greek lexicon, which an old fellow in a black gown fired at him, said Ned. Instantly, Sir What's-His-Name recovered himself, pitched the tyrant out of the window, and turned to join the Lady Victorious, but with a bump on his brow, found the door locked, tore up the curtain, made a rope ladder, got halfway down when the ladder broke, and he went it headfirst into the moat, 60 feet below. Could swim like a duck, paddled round the castle till he came to a little door guarded by two stout fellows, knocked their heads together till they cracked like a couple of nuts. Then, by a trifling exertion of the prodigious strength, he smashed in the door, went up a pair of stone steps covered with dust, a foot thick, toads as big as your fist, and spiders that would frighten you into hysterics, Miss March. At the top of these steps he came plump upon a sight that took his breath upon and chilled his blood. A tall figure all in white with a veil over his face, and a lamp in his wasted hand, went on Meg. It beckoned, gliding noiselessly before him down corridors as dark and cold as any tomb. Shadowy effigies in armor stood on either side. A dead silence reigned. The lamp burned blue, and the ghostly figure ever and anon turned its face toward him, showing the glitter of awful eyes through its white veil. They reached a curtained door, behind which sounded lovely music. He sprang forward to enter, but the spectre plucked him back and waved threateningly before him. "Snuff-box," said Joe in a sepulchral tone, which convulsed the audience. "Thank ye." said the knight politely as he took a pinch and sneezed 7 times so violently that his head fell off. "Ha ha!" laughed the ghost, and having peeped through the keyhole at the princess spinning away for dear life, the evil spirit picked up her victim and put in a large tin box where there were 11 other knights packed together without their heads, like sardines, who all rose and began to dance a hornpipe. Cut in Fred as Joe paused for breath. And as they danced, the rubbishy old castle turned to a man of war in full sail. "Up with the jib, reef the tops. Aye, halyards, helm hard hilly, and a man the guns," roared the captain, as a Portuguese pirate hove in sight, with a flag black as ink flying from her foremast. "Go in and win, my hearties," says the captain, and a tremendous fight began. Of course the British beat, they always do. "No, they don't," cried Joe aside. Having taken the pirate's captain prisoner, sailed slap over the schooner, whose decks were piled high with dead and whose lee scuppers ran blood, for the order had been cutlasses and die hard. "Boatswain's mate, take a bite of the flying jib sheet, and start this villain if he doesn't confess his sins double quick," said the British captain. The Portuguese held his tongue like a brick and walked the plank, while the jolly tars cheered like mad. But the sly dog dived, came up under the man-of-war, sculled her, and down she went, with all sail set, to the bottom of the sea, where— "Oh, gracious, what shall I say?" cried Sally, as Fred ended his rigmarole, in which he had jumbled together pell-mell nautical phrases and facts out of one of his favorite books. "Well, they went to the bottom, and a nice mermaid welcomed them, but was much grieved in finding the box of headless knights, and kindly pickled them in brine, hoping to discover the mystery about them. For being a woman, she was curious. By and by a diver came down, and the mermaid said, 'I'll give you a box of pearls if you can take it up,' for she wanted to restore the poor things to life, and couldn't raise the heavy load herself. So the diver hoisted up, and was much disappointed on opening it to find no pearls. He left it in a great lonely field, where it was found by a little goose girl, who kept 100 fat geese in the field," said Amy, when Sally's invention gave out. The little girl was sorry for them, and asked an old woman what she would do to help them. "Your geese will tell you. They know everything," said the old woman. So she asked what she should use for new heads, since the old ones were lost, and all the geese opened their 100 mouths and screamed. "Cabbages," continued Laurie promptly. "Just the thing," said the girl, and ran to get 12 fine ones from her garden. She put them on. The knights revived at once, thanked her, and went on their way rejoicing, never knowing the difference. For there were so many other heads like them in the world that no one thought anything of it. The knight in whom I'm interested went back to find the pretty face, and learned that the princesses had spun themselves free, and all gone and married, but one. He was in a great state of mind at that, and mounted the colt, who stood by him through thick and thin, rushed to the castle to see which was left. Perhaps over the edge he saw the queen of his affections picking flowers in her garden. "Will you give me a rose?" said he. "You must come get it. I can't come to you. It isn't proper," said she, as sweet as honey. He tried to climb over the hedge, but it seemed to grow higher and higher. Then he tried to push through, but it grew thicker and thicker, and he was in despair. So he patiently broke twig after twig till he had made a little hole through which he peeped, saying imploringly, "Let me in, let me in." But the pretty princess did not seem to understand, for she picked her noses quietly, and left him to fight his way in. Whether he did or not, Frank will tell you. "I can't, I'm not playing. I never do," said Frank, dismayed at the sentimental predicament out of which he was to rescue the obscure couple. Beth had disappeared behind Joe, and Grace was asleep. "So the poor knight is to be left sticking in the hedge, is he?" asked Mr. Brooks, still watching the river and playing with the wild rose in his buttonhole. "I guess the princess gave him a posy and opened the gate after a while," said Laurie, smiling to himself as he threw acorns in his tutor. "What a piece of nonsense we have made! With practice we might do something quite clever. Do you know Truth?" "I hope so," said Meg soberly. "The game, I mean." "What is it?" said Fred. "Why, you pile up your hands, choose a number, and draw out in turn, and the person who draws out the number has to answer truly any question put by the rest. It's great fun." "Let's try it," said Joe, who liked new experiments. Miss Kate and Mr. Brooks, Meg, and Ned declined, but Fred, Sally, Joe, and Laurie piled and drew, and the lot fell to Laurie. "Who are your heroes?" asked Joe. Grandfather Napoleon. Which lady here do you think prettiest? Said Sally. Margaret. Which do you like best? From Fred. Joe, of course. What silly questions you ask. And Joe gave a disdainful shrug as the rest laughed at Laurie's matter-of-fact tone. Try again. Truth isn't a bad game, said Fred. It's a very good one for you, retorted Joe in a low voice. Her turn came next. What is your greatest fault? Asked Fred, by way of testing her the virtue he lacked himself. A quick temper. What do you most wish for? Said Laurie. A pair of boot lacings, returned Joe, guessing and defeating his purpose. Not a true answer. You must say what you really do want most. Genius. Don't you wish you could give it to me? Laurie? And she slyly smiled in his disappointed face. What virtues do you most admire in a man? Asked Sally. Courage and honesty. Now my turn, said Fred, and his hand came last. Let's give it to him, whispered Laurie to Joe, who nodded and asked at once. Didn't you cheat at croquet? Well, yes, a little bit. Good. Didn't you take your story out of the sea, Lion? Said Laurie. Rather. Don't you think the English nation perfect in every respect? Asked Sally. I should be ashamed of myself if I didn't. He's a true John Bull. Now, Miss Sally, you shall have a chance without waiting to a draw. I'll hurry up your feelings first by asking if you don't think you are something of a flirt, said Laurie as Joe nodded to Fred as a sign that peace was declared. That impertinent boy, of course I'm not, proclaimed Sally with an air that proved the contrary. What do you hate most? Asked Fred. Spiders and rice pudding. What do you like best? Asked Joe. Dancing and French gloves. Well, I think truth is a very silly play. Let's have a sensible game of authors to refresh our minds, proposed Joe. Ned, Frank, and the little girls joined in this, and while it went on, the three elders sat apart, talking. Miss Kate took out her sketch again, and Margaret watched her, while Mr. Brooke lay on the grass with a book, which he did not read. How beautifully you do it. I wish I could draw, said Meg with mingled admiration and regret in her voice. Why don't you learn? I should think you had taste and talent for it, replied Miss Kate graciously. I haven't time. Your mamma prefers other accomplishments, I fancy. So did mine, but I proved to her that I had had talent by taking a few lessons privately, and then she was quite willing I should go on. Can't you do the same with your governess? I have none. I forgot young ladies in America go to school more than with us. Very fine schools they are, too, Papa says. You go in a private one, I suppose. I don't go at all. I'm a governess myself. Oh, indeed. And Miss Kate, but she might as well have said, Dear me, how dreadful, for her tone implied it, and something in her face made Meg color, and wish she had not been so frank. Mr. Brooke looked up and said quickly, Young ladies in America love independence as much as their ancestors did, and are admired and respected for supporting themselves. Oh, yes, of course, it's very nice and proper in them to do so. We have many most respectable and worthy young women who do the same and are employed by the nobility, because being the daughters of gentlemen they are both well-bred and accomplished, you know, said Miss Kate in a patronizing tone that hurt Meg's pride, and made her work seem not only more distasteful, but degrading. Did the German song suit, Miss March? Inquired Mr. Brooks, breaking an awkward pause. Oh, yes, it was very sweet, and I'm much obliged to whoever translated it for me. And Meg's downcast face brightened as she spoke. Don't you read German? Asked Miss Kate with a look of surprise. Not very well. My father who taught me is away, and I don't get it on very fast alone, for I have no one to correct my pronunciation. Try a little now. Here's the skiller, Mary Stuart, and a tutor who loves to teach, and Mr. Brooke laid his book on her lap with an inviting smile. It's so hard, I'm afraid to try, said Meg gratefully, but bashful in the presence of the accomplished young lady beside her. I'll read a bit to encourage you, and Miss Kate read one of the most beautiful passages in a perfectly correct but perfectly expressionless manner. Mr. Brooke made no comment as she turned the book to Meg, who said innocently, I thought it was poetry. Some of it is. Try this passage. There was a queer smile about Mr. Brooke's mouth as he opened at poor Mary's lament. Meg, obediently following the long grass blade which her new tutor used to point with, read slowly and timidly, unconsciously making poetry of the hard words by the soft intonation of her musical voice. Down the page went the green guide, and presently, forgetting her listener and the beauty of the sad scene, Meg read as if alone, giving a little touch of tragedy to the words of the unhappy queen. If she had seen the brown eyes then, she would have stopped short, but she never looked up, and the lesson was not spoiled for her. "Very well indeed," said Mr. Brooke, as she paused, quite ignoring her many mistakes, and looking as if he did indeed love to teach. Miss Kate put up her glass, and having taken a survey of the little tableau before her, showed her sketchbook, saying with condescension, "You've a nice accent, and in time will be a clever reader. I advise you to learn, for German is a valuable accomplishment for teachers. I must look after Grace. She is romping." And Miss Kate strolled away, adding to herself with a shrug, "I didn't come to chaperone a governess, though she is young and pretty. What odd people these Yankees are. I'm afraid Laurie will be quite spoiled among them. I forgot that English people rather turn up their noses at governesses, and don't treat them as we do," said Meg, looking at the retreating figure with an annoyed expression. "Tutors also have rather a hard time of it here, as I know to my sorrow. There's no place like America for us workers, Miss Margaret." And Mr. Brooke looked so contented and cheerful that Meg was ashamed to lament her hard lot. "I'm glad I live in them. I don't like my work, but I get a good deal of satisfaction out of it after all, so I won't complain. I only wish I liked teaching as you do." "I think you would if you had Laurie for a pupil. I shall be very sorry to lose him next year," said Mr. Brooke, busily punching holes in the turf. "Going to college, I suppose?" Meg's lip asked the question, but her eyes added, "And what becomes of you?" "Yes, it's high time he went, for he is ready, and as soon as he is off I shall turn soldier. I am needed." "I am glad of that," exclaimed Meg. "I should think very young men would want to go, though it is hard for the mothers and sisters who stay at home," she added sorrowfully. "I have neither, and a very few friends to care whether I live or die," said Mr. Brooke rather bitterly, as he absently put the dead rose in the hole he had made and covered it up like a little grave. "Laurie and his grandfather would take a great deal, and we should all be very sorry to have any harm happen to you," said Meg heartily. "Thank you, that sounds pleasant," began Mr. Brooke, looking cheerful again. But before he could finish his speech, Ned, mounted on his old horse, came lumbering up to display his equestrian skill before the young ladies, and there was no more quiet that day. "Don't you love to ride?" asked Grace of Amy, as they stood resting after a race round the field with the others, led by Ned. "I dote upon it, my sister. Meg used to ride when Papa was rich, but we don't keep any horses now, excellent Ellentry," added Amy, laughing. "Tell me about Ellentry. Is it a donkey?" asked Grace curiously. "Why, you see, Joe is crazy about horses, and so am I, but we've only got an old side saddle and no horse. Out in our garden is an apple tree that has a nice low branch, so Joe puts a saddle on it, fix some reins on the part that turns up, and we bounce away on Ellentry whenever we like." "How funny," laughed Grace. "I have a pony at home, and ride nearly every day in the park with Fred and Kate. It's very nice, for my friends go too, and the row is full of ladies and gentlemen." "Dear, how charming. I hope I shall go abroad some day, but I'd rather go to Rome than the Row," said Amy, who had not the remotest idea that the Row was and wouldn't have asked for the world. Frank, sitting just behind the little girls, heard what they were saying, and pushed his crutch away from him with an impatient gesture as he watched the active lads going through all sorts of comical gymnastics. Beth, who was collecting the scattered author cards, looked up and said in her shy yet friendly way, "I'm afraid you are tired. Can I do anything for you?" "Talk to me, please. It's dull sitting by myself," answered Frank, who had evidently been used to being made much of at home. If he had asked her to deliver a Latin oration, it would not have seemed a more impossible task to bashful Beth. But there was no place to run to, no Joe to hide behind now, and the poor boy looked so wistful at her that she bravely resolved to try. "What do you like to talk about?" she asked. fumbling over the cards or dropping half as she tried to tie them up. Put those down. Well, I like to hear about cricket and boating and hunting, said Frank, who had not yet learned to suit his amusements to his strength. Well, about 4 in the morning you get up. You gotta cover your scent, though. My heart, what shall I do? I don't know anything about them, thought Beth, forgetting the boy's misfortune in her flurry. She said, hoping to make him talk. I never saw any hunting, but I suppose you know all about it. I did once, but I can never hunt again, for I go hurt leaping a confound 5 barred gates. So there are no more horses and hounds for me, said Frank with a sigh that made Beth hate herself for her innocent blunder. Your deer are much prettier than our ugly buffaloes, she said, turning to the praise for help and feeling glad that she had read one of the boys' books in which Joe delighted. Buffaloes proved soothing and satisfactory, and in her eagerness to amuse another, Beth forgot herself and was quite unconscious of her sisters. Surprise and delight at the unusual spectacle of Beth talking away to one of the dreadful boys, against whom she had begged protection. Bless her heart, she pities him, so she is good to him, said Joe, beaming at her from the croquet ground. I always said she was a little saint, added Meg, as if there could be no further doubt of it. I haven't heard Frank laugh so much ever so long, said Grace to Amy, as they sat discussing dolls and making tea sets out of acorn cups. My sister Beth is a very fastidious girl when she likes to be, said Amy, well pleased at Beth's success. She meant fascinating, but as Grace didn't know the exact meaning of either word, fastidious sounded well and made it a good impression. An impromptu circus, fox and geese, and an amicable game of croquet finished the afternoon. At sunset the tent was struck, hampers packed, wickets pulled up, boats loaded, and the whole party floated down the river, singing at the tops of their voices. Ned, getting sentimental, warbled the serenade with the pensive refrain. Alone, alone, ah, woe alone at the lines. We each are young, we each have a heart. Oi, why should we stand thus coldly apart? He looked at Meg with such a lackadaisical expression that she laughed outright and spoiled her song. How can you be so cruel to me? He whispered under cover of a lively joy. You've kept close to that starched-up English woman all day, and now you snub me. I didn't mean to, but you look so funny I really couldn't help it, replied Meg, passing over the first part of the reproach, for it was quite true that she had shunned him, remembering the Moffat party and the talk after it. Ned was offended and turned to Sally for consolation, saying to her rather pettishly, There isn't a bit of a flirt in that girl, is there? Not a particle, but she's dear, returned Sally, defending her friend, even while confessing her shortcomings. She's not a stricken dear anyway, said Ned, trying to be witty and succeeding as well as very young gentlemen usually do. On the lawn where it had gathered, the little party separated with cordial good nights and goodbyes, for the Vaughns were going to Canada. As the 4 sisters went home through the garden, Miss Kate looked after them, saying without the patronizing tone in her voice, In spite of their demonstrative manners, American girls are very nice when one knows them. I quite agree with you, said Mr. Brooke.
Ah, you're pissing me off. You got a bad vibe.
Very good. Chapter 13, Little Women. Castles in the Air. Laurie lay luxuriously swinging to and fro in his hammock one warm September afternoon, wondering what his neighbors were about, but too lazy to go and find out. He was in one of his moods, for the day had been both unprofitable and unsatisfactory, and he was wishing he could live it over again. The hot weather made him indolent, and he had striked his studies, tried Mr. Brooks' patience to the utmost, displeased his grandfather by practicing half the afternoon, frightened the maidservants half out of their wits by mischievously hinting that one of his dogs was going mad, and after high words with the stableman about some fancy neglect of his horse, he had flung himself into his hammock to fume over the stupidity of the world in general, till the peace of the lovely day quieted him in spite of himself. staring up into the green gloom of the horse chestnut trees above him. He dreamed dreams of all sorts and was just imagining himself tossing on the ocean in a voyage round the world, when the sound of voices brought him ashore in a flash. Peeping through the meshes in the hammock, he saw the marches coming out as if bound on some expedition. "What in the world are those girls about now?" thought Laurie, opening his sleepy eyes to take a good look, for there was something rather peculiar in the appearance of his neighbors. Each wore a large, flapping hat, a brown linen pouch slung over one shoulder, and carried a long staff. Meg had a cushion, Joe a book, Beth a basket, and Amy a portfolio. All walked quietly through the garden out at the little back gate and began to climb the hill that lay between the house and river. "Well, that's cool," said Laurie to himself, "to have a picnic and never ask me. They can't be going in the boat, for they haven't got that key. Perhaps they forgot it, or I'll take it to them and see what's going on." Though possessed of half a dozen hats, it took him some time to find one. Then there was a hunt for the key, which was at last discovered in his pocket, so that the girls were quite out of sight when he leaped the fence and ran after them. Taking the shortest way to the boathouse, he waited for them to appear, but no one came, and he went up to the hill to take an observation. A grove of pines covered one part of it, and from the heart of this green spot came a clear sound, then the soft sigh of the pines, with a drowsy chirp of a cricket. "Here's a landscape," thought Laurie, peeping through the bushes and looking wide awake and good-natured already. It was a rather pretty little picture, for the sisters sat together in the shady nook with sun and shadow flickering over them, the aromatic wind lifting their hair and cooling their hot cheeks. All the little wood people going on with their affairs, as if these two were no strangers, but old friends.
Tear it down.
Meg sat upon her cushion, sewing daintily with her white hands and looking at fresh and sweet as a rose in her pink dress among the green. Beth was sorting the cones that lay thick under the hemlock nearby, for she made pretty things with them. Amy was sketching a group of ferns, and Joe was knitting as she read aloud. A shadow passed over the boy's face as he watched them, feeling that he ought to go away because uninvited, yet lingering because home seemed very lonely and this quiet party in the woods most attractive to his restless spirit. He stood so still that a squirrel, busy with its harvesting, ran down a pine close behind him, saw him suddenly and skipped back, scolding so shrilly that Beth looked up, espied the wistful face behind the bushes, and beckoned with a reassuring smile. "May I come in, please? Or shall I be a bother?" he asked, advancing slowly. Meg lifted her eyebrows, but Joe scowled at her defiantly and said at once, "Of course you may. We should have asked you before, only we thought you wouldn't care for such a girl's game as this. I always like your games. If Meg doesn't want me, I'll go away. I've no objection. If you do something, it's against the rules to be idle here," replied Meg gravely but graciously. "Much obliged. I'll do anything if you let me stop a bit, for it's as dull as the desert of Sahara down there. Shall I sew, read, comb, draw, or do all at once?" "Bring on your bears. I'm ready." And Laurie sat down with a submissive expression delightful to behold. "Finish the story while I set my heel," said Joe, handing him the book. "Yes'm," was the meek answer as he began, doing his best to prove his gratitude for the favor of admission to the Busy Bee Society.
We're gonna tear you
The story was not a
apart.
long one, and when it was finished, he ventured to ask a few questions as a reward of merit. "Please, ma'am, could I inquire if the highly instructive and charming institution is a new one?" "Would you tell him?" asked Meg of her sisters. "He'll laugh," said Amy warmly. "Who cares?" said Joe. "I guess I'll like it," added Beth. "Of course I shall. I'll give you my word I won't laugh. Tell away, Joe, and don't be afraid." "The idea of being afraid of you. Well, you see we used to play Pilgrim's Progress, and we have been going on with it in earnest all winter and summer." "Yes, I know," said Laura, nodding wisely. "Who told you?" demanded Joe. "Spirits." "No, I did. I wanted to amuse him one night when you were all away, and he was rather dismal. He did like it, so don't scold, Joe," said Beth meekly. "You can't keep a secret. Never mind, it saves trouble now. Go on, please, said Laurie as Joe became absorbed in her work, looking a trifle displeased. Oh, didn't she tell you about this new plan of ours? Well, we have tried not to waste our holiday, but each has had a task and worked at it with a will. The vacation is nearly over, the stints are all done, and we are never so glad that we didn't dawdle. Yes, I should think so, said Laurie, thought regretfully of his own idle days. Mother likes to have us out of doors as much as possible, so we bring our work here and have nice times. For the fun, if we bring our things in these bags, wear the old hats, use poles to climb the hill, and play pilgrims as we used to do years ago. We call this hill the Delectable Mountain, for we can look far away and see the country where we hope to live sometime. Joe pointed, and Laurie sat up to examine, for through an opening in the wood one could look across the wide blue river, the meadows on the other side, far over the outskirts of the great city, to the green hills that rose to meet the sky. The sun was low, and the heavens glowed with the splendor of an autumn sunset. Gold and purple clouds lay on the hilltops, and rising high into the ruddy light were silvery white peaks that shone like the airy spires of some celestial city. How beautiful that is, said Laurie softly, for he was quick to see and feel beauty of any kind. It's often so when we like to watch it, for it is never the same, but always splendid, replied Amy, wishing she could paint it.
God damn.
Joe talks about the country where we hope to live sometime. The real country, she means, with pigs and chickens and haymaking. It would be nice, but I wish the beautiful country up there was real and we could ever go to it, said Beth amusingly. There's a lovelier country even than that, where we shall go by and by, when we are good enough, answered Meg with her sweetest voice. It seems so long to wait, so hard to do. I want to fly away at once, as those shallows fly, and go in at that splendid gate. You'll get there, Beth, sooner or later, no fear of that, said Joe. I'm the one that will have to fight and work, and climb and wait, and maybe never get it after all. You'll have me for company if that's in comfort. I shall have to do a deal of traveling before I came in sight of your celestial city. If I arrive late, you'll say a good word for me, won't you, Beth? Something in the boy's face troubled his little friend, but she said cheerfully with her quiet eyes on the changing clouds, if people really want to go and really try all their lives, I think they will get it in, for I don't believe there are any locks on that door or any guards at the gate. I always imagine it as it is in the picture, where the shining ones stretch out their hand to welcome poor Christian as he comes up from the river. Wouldn't it be fun if all the castles in the air which we make could come true, and we could live in them? Said Joe after a little pause. I've made such quantity it would be hard to choose which I'd have, said Laurie, lying flat and throwing cones at the quarrel who had betrayed him. You'd have to take your favorite one. What is it? Asked Meg. If I tell mine, will you tell yours? Yes, if the girls will too. We will. Now, Laurie, after I'd seen as much of the world as I want to, I'd like to settle in Germany and have just as much music as I choose. I'm to be a famous musician myself, and all creation is to rush to hear me, and I'm never to be bothered about money or business, but just enjoy myself and live for what I like. That's my favorite castle. What's yours, Meg? Margaret seemed to find it a little hard to tell hers, and waved a break before her face, as if to disperse imaginary gnats, while she said slowly, I should like a lovely house, full of all sorts of luxurious things. Nice food, pretty clothes, handsome furniture, pleasant people, and heaps of money. I am to be mistress of it, and imagine it as I like, with plenty of servants, so I never need work a bit. How I should enjoy it, for I wouldn't be idle, but do good and make everyone love me dearly. Wouldn't you have a master for your castle in the air? Asked Laurie slyly. I said pleasant people, you know, and Meg carefully tied up her shoe as she spoke, so that no one saw her face. Why don't you say you'd have a splendid, wise, good husband and some angelic little children? You know your castle wouldn't be perfect without, said blunt Joe, who had no tender fancies yet and rather scorned romance except in books. Yes. You'd have nothing but horses, inkstands, and novels in yours, answered Meg petulantly. Wouldn't I, though? I'd have a stable full of Arabian steeds, rooms piled high with books, and I'd write out of a magic inkstand so that my works should be as famous as Laurie's music. I want to do something splendid before I go into my castle, something heroic or wonderful that won't be forgotten that I'm dead. I don't know what, but I'm on the watch for it and mean to astonish you all some day. I think I shall write books, and get rich and famous. That would suit me, so that is my favorite dream. Mine is to stay at home safe with father and mother and help take care of the family, said Beth contentedly. Don't you wish for anything else? Asked Lori. Since I had my own little piano, I am perfectly satisfied. I only wish we would all keep well and be together. Nothing else. I have ever so many wishes, but the pet one is to be an artist and go to Rome and do fine pictures and be the best artist in the whole world. Was Amy's finest desire. We're an ambitious set, aren't we? Every one of us but Beth wants to be rich and famous and gorgeous in every respect. I do wonder if any of us will ever get out of wishes, said Lori, chewing grass like a meditative calf. I've got the key to my castle in the air, but whether I can unlock the door remains to be seen, observed Joe mysteriously. I've got the key to mine, but I'm not allowed to try it. Hang college, muttered Lori with an impatient sigh. Here's mine. And Amy waved her pencil. I haven't got any, said Meg forlornly. Yes, you have, said Lori at once. Where? In the face. Nonsense, that's of no use. Wait and see if it doesn't bring you something worth having, replied the boy, laughing at the thought of a charming little secret which he fancied he knew. Meg colored behind the break, but asked no questions, and looked across the river with the same expectant expression which Mr. Brooke had sworn when he told the story of the night. If we are all alive 10 years hence, let's meet and see how many of us have got our wishes. Or how much nearer we are than now, said Joe, always ready with a plan. Bless me, how old I shall be, 27, exclaimed Meg, who felt grown up already, having just reached 17. You and I will be 26. Teddy, Beth 24, and Amy 22. What a venerable party, said Joe. I hope I shall have done something to be proud of that kind. But I'm such a lazy dog, and I'm afraid I shall dawdle, Joe. You need a motive, Mother says, and when you get it, she is sure you'll work splendidly. Is she? By Jupiter, I will, if I only get the chance, cried Lori, sitting up with sudden energy. I ought to be satisfied to please Grandfather. I do try, but it's working against the grain, you see, and it comes hard. He wants me to be an India merchant, as he was, and I'd rather be shot. I hate tea and silk and spices, and every sort of rubbish his old ships bring, and I don't care how soon they go to the bottom when I own them. Going to college ought to satisfy them, for I give them 4 years. He ought to let me off from the business. But he said, and I've got to do just as he did, unless I break away and please myself as my father did. If there was anyone left to stay with the old gentleman, I'd do it tomorrow. Lori spoke excitedly and looked ready to carry his threat into execution on the slightest provocation, for he was growing up very fast, and in spite of his indolent ways, had a young man's hatred of subjection, a young man's restless longing to have to work for himself. I advise you to sail away in one of your ships, and never come home again until you have tried your own way, said Joe, whose imagination was fired by the thought of such daring exploit, and whose sympathy was excited by what she called Teddy's wrong. That's not right, Joe. You mustn't talk in that way, and Lori mustn't take your bad advice. You should do just what your grandfather wishes, my dear boy, said Meg in her most maternal tone. Do your best at college, and when he sees that you try to please him, I'm sure he won't be hard on you or unjust as you. As you say, there is no one else to stay with and love him, and you never forgive him if you left him without his permission. Don't be dismal or fret, but do your duty, and you'll get your reward, as good Mr. Brooke has, by being respected and loved. What do you know about him? Asked Lori, grateful for the good advice, but objecting to the lecture, and glad to turn the conversation from himself after his unusual outbreak. Only what your grandpa told us about him, how he took good care of his own mother till she died, and wouldn't be abroad as tutor to some nice person because he wouldn't leave her, and how he provides now for an old woman who nursed his mother, and never tells anyone, but is just as generous and patient and good as he can be. So he is, dear old fellow, said Lori heartily, as Meg paused, looking flushed and earnest with her story. It's like Grandpa to find out all about him without letting him know, and tell all his goodness to others, so that they might like him. Brooke couldn't understand why his mother was so kind to him, asking him over with me and treating him in her beautiful friendly way. He thought she was just perfect, and talked about it for days and days, and went on about you all in flaming style. If ever I do get my wish, you see what I'll do for Brooke. Begin to do something now by not plaguing his life out.
said Meg sharply. How do you know I do, miss? I can always tell by his face when he goes away. If you have been good, he looks satisfied and walks briskly. If you have plagued him, he's sober and walks slowly, as if he wanted to go back and do his work better. Well, I like that. So you keep an account of my good and bad marks in Brooks' face, do you? I see him bow and smile as he passes your window, but I didn't know you got a telegraph. We haven't. Don't be angry, and don't tell him I said anything. It was only to show that I cared how you get on, and what is said here is said in confidence, you know, cried Meg, much alarmed at the thought of what might follow from her careless speech. I don't tell tales, replied Laurie with his high and mighty air, as Joe called a certain expression, which he occasionally wore. Only if Brooke is going to be a thermometer, I must find and have fair weather for him to report. Please don't be offended. I didn't mean to preach or tell tales to be silly. I only thought Joe was encouraging you in a feeling which you'd be sorry for by and by. You're so kind to us, we feel as if you were our brother and say just what we think. Forgive me, I meant it kindly. And Meg offered her hand with a gesture both affectionate and timid. Ashamed of his momentary pique, Laurie squeezed the kind little hand and said frankly, I'm the one to be forgiven. I'm cross and have been out of all sorts all day. I like to have you tell me my faults and be sisterly, so don't mind if I'm grumpy sometimes. I thank you all the same. Bent on showing that he was not offended, he made himself as agreeable as possible. Wound cotton for Meg, recited poetry to please Joe, shook down cones for Beth, and helped Amy with the ferns, proving himself a fit person to belong to the Busy Bee Society. In the midst of an animated discussion on the domestic habits of turtles, one of those inanimate creatures having strolled up from the river, the faint sound of the bell warned them that Hannah had put the tea to draw, and they would just have time to get home to supper. May I come again? Asked Laurie. Yes, if you are good and love your book, as the boys in the primer are told to do, said Meg, smiling. I'll try. Then you may come, and I'll teach you to knit, as the Scotchmen do. There's a demand for socks just now, added Joe, waving hers like a big blue worsted banner. They parted at the gate. That night, when Beth played to Mr. Lawrence in the twilight, Laurie, standing in the shadow of the curtain, listened to the little David, whose simple music always quieted his moody spirit, and watched the old man who sat with his gray head on his hand, thinking tender thoughts of the dead child he had loved so much. Remembering the conversation of the afternoon, the boy said to himself, with the resolve to make the sacrifice cheerfully, I'll let my castle go and stay with the dear old gentleman while he needs me, for I am all he has.
It's always a pleasure, ladies. I'll stick it out to the end. I definitely am bequeathed with poor grammar here. Excuse me. Let me beseech you. Hold on. Is it indestructible? Oh, fine. Yeah. I beseech you. Exactly. One away. Look at this. We're stuck though. We're looking pretty good. Hopefully we can make it through. Very well. Yep, that's what I wanted. You're done, bro. We got it, girls. It's a good deck, though. I'm satisfied with that. I don't know what that was about. That was glitchy as fuck. We appreciate it. We'll be back, girls.